Hello again, everyone. I'm Steve Beverly. West Tennessee Today has recently brought you two live discussions that have occurred at the Jackson-Madison County Public Library, all centered around one thing: literacy, reading. How can we help our children at the youngest of ages begin to grasp reading, comprehension, and critical thinking skills that are so important for them to move forward in later years into the workforce in our community and perhaps into even greater professional experiences? A group of community leaders have come together to exchange a dialogue and try to come up with possible solutions that can lead our community forward by making literacy an important theme. Well, after we did those first two forums in Jackson-Madison County's public library, I invited them to come here to Union University, to our studios, and to continue that discussion with some of the same people and some others that have been added. And one who is with us in this particular discussion is Dr. Jared Myrickle, who is the Chief Academic Officer of the Jackson-Madison County School District. What we hope you see over the course of the next hour is critical discussions that focus on children, but also in the need for more and more volunteers in our community to get involved in the process, to help become mentors as far as reading is concerned, and also to become involved in the public education system in our community. The discussion is facilitated by Don Polly, who is an author and a millennial advocate, and also by Dr. Caressa Morrow, who has authored a book on literacy called Ring the Bell, and she is also an educational consultant. And you'll see identified all the rest of the community leaders that we have gathered around our news set, and they'll do this discussion just as they would any other time without any interruptions. And so let's go to that discussion right now.
Good morning and welcome to our third roundtable discussion of Leaders or Readers. I'd like to thank Mr. Steve Beverly and Union University for inviting us over here for our third discussion. The purpose of Leaders or Readers initiative is a collaborative effort of community leaders working together to increase reading proficiency. And the initiative aims to raise the bar for reading proficiency so that all students are reading on a grade level, close the gap in reading achievement that separates many low-income students from their peers, and ensure that all children, including and especially children from low-income families, have an equitable opportunity to meet those higher standards that are being placed on literacy skills. My name's Don Polly, and I'm a member of the board of the Imagination Library, as well as a reading coach for Rise to Read. Currently, I'm a contributing writer for the Jackson Business Journal, which I've passed along to everybody. That's how I ended up meeting Dr. Morrill. And I also write for Crime Scene Examiner News. I'm an author of a book called I'm Not an Anachronism, and I'm currently working on my second book, which I plan to have out later on this year. And I can sum up how I feel about the last two meetings that I have, and I can put it all in one word: grateful. So with all that being said, I'd like to introduce my mentor, very accomplished and distinguished colleague, Dr. Caressa Morrow.
Thank you. As educators, the number one challenge we are having in education is how do we get all kids to read and perform on grade level? In order to do this, we need community leaders, parents, volunteers, tutors to come to the school to work with our students. The guiding question today is, how do we, as community leaders, support, provide resources for our students to improve workforce literacy?
Well, I'm a sixth grade teacher, and I teach science. And I have students many times who are not on grade level as far as reading. And what I think one thing we should do is when a child is in the second or third grade, if they are not on reading level, I feel that they should be pulled from their science and social studies classes. And their focus should be reading and math all day, because those are life skills. Now, they should also have their activity classes. But I think that if you pull them from those two courses, because they can read about science, social studies, and reading, but they need to practice reading. And I think taking out the science socials for a little while until they get on grade level will give them that opportunity to improve their reading skills and get on grade level.
Well, I think something that's important for us to support workforce literacy is not only to have influence in the schoolwork or in the school building, but when they leave to know that if you want to be successful in the workforce, you have to be literate. Maybe bring in, like the athletics, someone that works in a load factory who manages people, someone who makes a lot of money in the workforce, someone like that coming in and showing that it's important for them to be literate with it. So I just think influence is really important, and a resource we can bring in is other influences that are realistic for them to know.
And to tag off of what Austin just said, as far as workforce literacy, it goes beyond reading literacy. To be literate as far as workforce training, you need basic STEM skills in order to be successful in the workforce. And in order to have those, you have to read and comprehend what you're reading. So it all ties back to reading literacy, but you still have to be strong in those science, technology, engineering, and math subjects as well.
One of the things that we have to be concerned about is the resources that it's going to take to bring our children up to the level where they need to be. We know that we have gaps, particularly in the lower economic income students. It's not as a community that we don't have the capacity to do it. We have to have the intentions of doing it. A lot of our issues are self-made. If we don't do those things at the earliest possible level, then of course the community can help. But functionality says that we need to do it at the earliest possible level so you don't have to have these difficulties. We have a document called the School to Prison Pipeline. And if we're not sufficiently educating these children at the very earliest of ages, then they're going to fall into that gap. And it's something that we have repeated for decades now. It's time to get smart.
I want to piggyback on something you said, because I think up until a couple of years ago, there was a lack of even basic resources in classrooms for teachers to use. Teachers didn't have reading curriculum. They didn't have any curriculum for that matter. One of the things I think that really needs to be understood across the community is what we're asking teachers to do in the school system now so the community can better support the initiatives that are taking place. So for example, in kindergarten through second grade now, there's a standard structured phonics curriculum that's in place. It's being taught to all students, not just some schools, but all kindergarten first and second grade students are now getting that common foundation. Starting in kindergarten, we're also emphasizing a heavy knowledge building component. So students are getting deep background knowledge on historical figures, science and social studies topics, Native American, various things, and even expanding out into different cultures around the world in a very systematic way, so that because we have such a transient student population, roughly 30% of our students might change schools within a given year. When they leave one school, they're going into a very similar classroom environment in another school. And so the thing that folks don't want to hear is that it's going to take a long time for students to matriculate grade after grade and for us to fill some of those gaps. So I think the conversation in the meantime, while teachers are getting better at teaching this new curriculum and instilling some of those skills that are going to help our students be more proficient readers, is what do we do to support students that maybe didn't receive some of the resources in the last 5 to 10 years that have created some of the gaps that we see in our upper middle school and high school students?
Well, let me just back off of that, because I think the real question is at this point, how big is the need? Now, we know that there is a need, but when we look at our schools as a total, when we look at the grade levels, particularly when we drill down into ethnicities, where are we in terms of right now, today, in terms of efficiency? I think the system, at least a couple of years ago, was probably at a 39% proficiency rate. So where is all these sub-schools? Where are they? In order for us to fix the problem, we need to know what the problem is. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that what do you, as an educator, what are the resources that you need in order to fix the problem as quickly as we possibly can? Mm-hmm. Forget about what it costs. Okay? That's some of the things that we need to talk about.
I'd like to jump in on that too, because a few years back, I remember after an NAACP meeting, a group of people were discussing this very same thing. And there was a lady that stepped out and she said, if you can read, get a child and teach them to read. And it just like the light bulb went on, because it is a community problem. If you can read, you are completely capable of teaching someone to read. You know, reading is natural. It's not like we're trying to rear a community of NFL players, you know, where there's size and skill. You know, reading is natural. Every child should be able to learn to read. We started A Rise to Read because I worked with Madison Achieves for 5 years. That was a program that took students out of high school to Jackson State or TCAT and gave them workforce development skills. Our purpose there was to build a workforce. What we found was that remediation at Jackson State, you know, a full 2/3 of our students were embedded in remedial courses. They had to go an entire year, sometimes 2 years, to even start accumulating credits. So, you know, when we stepped away from that, we had $200,000, talking about resources.
Right.
We had $200,000 from the chamber to pay those last dollar scholarships. And the success was low. It was very low because our students lacked those second grade skills, and that's why we started A Rise to Read. We want our children on grade level by 3rd grade. The beauty of our program is that it costs almost nothing. It really does. We have a box of supplies, we have paper, pencils, games, and our children are learning to read. And to your point, Jared, I do believe that our students are reading better now than when we started. Not necessarily because of what we're doing, but because of the phonics instruction that you have implemented. We teach sight words, they work on phonics, and together our children are making tremendous gains.
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
think one component with this is our parents. You can probably statistically look at it. Most kids that can't read coming from home, their mom and dad probably can't read. I think you talked about resources in the home, and we get our parents more involved in seeing what their reading levels are. Not more so embarrassing, but see what we can do with some type of resources. See, can we do parenting classes, things like that, to kind of, you know, see what's going on with the mom and dad and where their reading levels at, to give them the resources. Because if mom and dad can't teach you how to read and don't read it around the house, 9 times the kid's probably not going to do any reading or want to read.
Yeah.
So I think that parent component we need to look at and see what we can do.
There's actually some research from E.D. Hirsch Jr. that says that only 20% of a child's academic outcomes are determined by what happens within the school,
That's right.
and 80% is a function of what happens at home.
Right.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. And the outcome, it's even skewed towards lower income students. The lower income you are,
Right.
the more that's determined by what happens in your home environment. So that's where I think, from the school system's perspective, the biggest thing the community can do is understand the approach that we're taking, not that it's perfect, but so that it can be reinforced with our school children at home. So, and again, I go back, that's 2 things. In our kindergarten through 2nd grade students, the structured phonics approach that we're taking, reinforcing letter sounds, what letters look like and what they sound like when you blend them together, what sounds they make when you see them on a page, getting them to decode and then blend those words back together. So in common language, sound them out and then put them back together and say it as one word. That's one huge thing, and that's something that whether a parent is reading on a 5th grade level or has a graduate degree, they know what the letters sound like in the alphabet, and they can do that at home. So that's a huge thing that could happen with early grade students. From a bigger picture, anyone who's like donating or wanting to provide more resources, we have supplementary books that go along with the topics that are being taught in our reading classes. And the research that we're using says that when you read with the child on the same topic for 4 or 5 weeks, they build their vocabulary 3 to 4 times faster. So if I read about dinosaurs for a month, I'm going to acquire vocabulary faster than if I pick different topics every day. So we have supplemental list of supplemental books that either in collaboration with the library or just through private donors, we could purchase those and send those home. There's lots of ways that can be supported, but I think it starts with everyone understanding the approach that the public school system is taking through our literacy program, because we are seeing dividends. We had twice as many students proficient on a phonics test this past year than ever in the history of the school system since that test has been administered. It was a majority of students that were proficient on that at all schools. It wasn't, and I say that because all subgroups were able to show some growth on that. So I think an awareness of the plan that we're enacting, and then how does that translate home? Because again, the majority of that impact is being made in a home environment.
And I think exactly when you're talking about the 80% is in the home environment, and you do have lots of children consistently moving, what is the consistent place that fits that bill that can assist in literacy? And that is the public library. It's sustainable. We have long-term funding from the city and the county. And I think what we've been looking at doing, and we've talked to the school system a lot, and it's how do we align what we're doing and the purchase of materials that we're doing for children and teens with the type of books that align with the things they're studying at school, but also ways that parents can assist, and not to get too off topic with adult literacy, which is what we're talking about here, but there are a series of books, certain types of books that are written in a way that people that struggle some with literacy can enjoy reading. Even James Patterson has a series, and they're little short, kind of his type of books that are written on a different kind of level. And so one of the things that we look at when we make our book purchases are we providing enough types of books for different types of adult readers, teen readers, and early readers, and I think that's really important. But again, it's an ongoing process as the school system continues to refine what they're doing. Then our role, again, in partnership is how do we make sure that our materials are consistent with that. But I think it comes back to something you've said as a previous meeting is how do you make reading cool, and how do you get the parents involved in that. And we've talked about how we send home, and we'll be doing that soon, library card sign-up forms to the schools. The children can have their parent just sign that form and send it back to the school, and then we'll send the child the library card. But how do we make that cool? And I think September is library card sign-up month, so I think we need the community's help in maybe making September a push for parents and other people to understand the value of what they can do with a library card. And again, that's way more than books. We have lots of online resources and technology that can assist in making that fun and cool, but getting some of the student athletes and other, not just athletes, but some of the students in our school systems that are achieving high academically, and make some little fun, either photos or having a little quick PSA video with them saying, get a library card this month, and having some community leaders and otherwise. So I just think that our mission is literacy as part of our mission in various capacities, whether it's technology literacy or actually reading literacy. But it's letting the community know that we have resources and you fund us. And so we want to make sure that you are using us, but that also that we are providing to you what you need, and what this community needs to meet the needs that are here, because we can do it.
That's such an excellent point, because the number one predictor of reading success, more than parents' education, more than money, is how many books does a child have in the home. And I argued with that when I first saw that statistic. I thought, that cannot be right. But if you think about it, if a child is taught basketball at school and he goes home and has no ball, has no hoop, he's never going to be an NBA ball player. It takes that practice, that daily practice. So there have to be books in the home, and I think that's an important point.
So the question I'm wondering, how are we reaching the parents? What are we doing? What strategy, what interventions do the district already have in place to reach out to the parents? And what are your organization doing to make parents want to come to the school? What are we doing to invite the parents ongoing and are we monitoring at the schools, the parents that are coming to the school? I'm wondering that because I know from my experience, until I made that connection with the parents, that collaboration, it was not going to be a win-win. And the only way for it to be a win-win, we have to have a relationship with the parents. Because high achievement starts at home, and once the parents are involved in the high achievement, then the kids will produce on grade level, and they are motivated, because now we have a two-way conversation. When I started the Parent Wall of Fame, a parent would come to the school, Dr. Mara, how do I get my name on the wall? The star. Ma'am, in order for your name to go on the Parent Wall of Fame, kids must be reading above grade level, on grade level, or making progress. So we have to have that connection with the parent. There's no way around it. Now, what does that look like? It's different at every location.
Of course, you have parents who have low academic or educational attainment and things like that. The thing that keeps coming back to my mind, at one point, these parents were in our school system. And so, in a sense, we failed them. Because if a parent has low academic achievement, then for 12 or 13 years, we fail. If they graduated from our system, we failed to graduate them on reading level. However, so we can say that providing money or resources is important, but at the end of the day, what we do, are we specifically addressing the needs of every single student? Which is why I'm glad to hear, because I know we're taking phonics out of the system at some point, and so now we put it back in, and so we have to decide that we have to do something to address the needs of every single student in our community, or else we would never address the parent issue, because students at some point grow up and they become parents. And so if inviting parents, having conversation, I mean, think about the things we're doing across the state to address the needs for adult education, the things that Jackson State is doing now with adult education. So many different components across the community that says that we know that parents are important, but we cannot let the fact that we want workforce, we want to look good in order to strengthen workforce be the only thing that drives us. We have to let the fact that we care about kids drives us. So many other things drive why we have these types of conversations, other than the fact that we care about kids. I have to care about every single kid that comes into my classroom in my school and fall under my responsibility. I have to have that desire to make sure that when that kid leaves here, because if we say that we make a decision that a kid, is whether or not they're going to go to prison by 3rd grade, well, that means that a system has potentially had almost 5 years with that student. And I know we're saying that 80% of whether or not that student is going to be successful in school is coming from the home. But if all we have is 20%, are we maximizing the 20% that we have? Are we having the greatest impact with that 20%? Because how is it that we can feel comfortable with saying that we've had a student in our system for 5 years, and that student still cannot read, cannot pronounce simple sight words and things like that? It's not to just point fingers and cast blame, but it's to say that at the end of the day, a student must be able to read at grade level. And it doesn't matter who takes on that. If Don sees that student and he sees that student can't read, Don has a responsibility. If Michael sees that student and that student can't read, Michael has a responsibility. I cannot continue to sit back and say, shame on that parent who had 80% of the time, 80% of the influence, and they didn't do anything. At the end of the day, that student still can't read, and I see it.
Exactly.
When I see the need, I have a responsibility to do something about that. And so often we have neglected to do something about it because we look at students either, the truth of the matter is we all have some type of bias. And we have to learn how every day to remove those biases and say that is a kid, that is a child, and we have a responsibility.
Exactly.
Especially if we're saying that we understand the greater need of the community, but the immediate need is so that that student has all the tools necessary so that when it grows up, we won't be sitting around the table just like this one, talking about, look at those.
Michael, let me pick up on that point for a minute because I think
We
you
all
said
got
exactly right. Community, you said keyword community, but first, let me just ask Jared to be thinking about this. What would you do if you had $50 million for this school system specifically for reading? Think about that. The point that I want to make, Michael is so right and on point. Most of our problem is coming from that 80%. But the main predictor of a child's education is how wealthy that home is. To have books, you've got to have access to books. Access to books. When we started the Imagination Library, the focus was making sure that all of our children could read on grade level. And we started at the earliest possible moment, from birth all the way through the early stages of their life. Free books. Unfortunately, students do move. That's a problem that the school system has, but they're moving because of the lack of wealth and achievement. The cost of living goes up. We recently had a acknowledgement for the city of Jackson that we was 9th in affordable living in this country for a city of our size. But you look at the tales of two cities. You have those that have and those that have not. If we have 82% of our students in the public school system in the city of Jackson that's coming from home at or below poverty, then that's a problem. We can tout the 20%, but the bigger elephant in the room is that 80% that we're not really affecting to the extent because the school system can't do it. The community as a whole has to do it, and it starts with the investment of what we value. If we're not valuing those children to invest the money into it, $50 million would probably start a universal pre-K, wouldn't it? And a bunch of other things. That's right. So again, it's just about money. So it's all we fund what we value. If we're not valuing from a standpoint of view of our elected officials putting the money where it needs to go, when it needs to go, not 2 and 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, life will be a lot simpler, and this county will be a lot better. Instead of losing 1,200 to 1,300 people a year, then we will be gaining population. Everybody has to be engaged and involved, including our commercial industries, parents, students, educators, average people, retired folks. Everybody has a stake in this. It's not that it can't be fixed, it's whether or not we have the will to. Now, what would you do with the $50 million?
With $50 million, what I would do, number one, I would give a few of our schools a facelift. But then I would hire a whole lot more teachers and pay them a much higher salary in order to dramatically decrease the number of students. Not that, and there's a misconception about some overcrowding in schools. We don't have classrooms that are over our state ratios, but I would lower it down, especially in high need areas, to give more face-to-face time, but also more opportunities for students to respond.
Right, with an aide in that room.
If I'm in a classroom with 20, even with just 20 students, I'm going to get to chime in a few times, but if I'm in a classroom with 10, then I'm going to have a whole lot more opportunity to get involved. So that's what I would do. I want to go back to something you said about community, because when our district team started 2 summers ago, we had a series of community meetings. The most well-attended community meeting was at the community center at Leakin Courts. And that tells me that we've got I think we perpetuate the fact that there are unengaged or unmotivated parents.
Right. That's wrong.
That is a myth. We haven't given parents the right direction in terms of how to support their students when they come home. And in order to do that, as a school district, you have to have a well-articulated plan. That's right. And that's what we've been working really hard over the last couple of years. Again, it's not perfect yet, and we're not there yet, but it's in place, and it is working, and we're seeing that. Jackson was one of only 20% of school districts last year to increase achievement in a majority of subject areas. So 80% of the districts in Tennessee went backwards in a majority of areas. We went forward in a majority of areas. And so we're seeing lots of little indicators of progress like that let us know we're on the right track. It just takes time. It's not 2 years from now, we're not going to have 80% of kids reading on grade level. That's just not how literacy works. But if we keep moving down this path and keep talking about all children, then a decade from now, we can be at a place where we've made a significant shift and fundamentally altered the trajectory of some of these kids' lives.
Trust
And
the
the one thing
process.
the one thing you said about a tale of two cities, I think that's clear and true. What we have to do is communicate. I read a book, Educating All God's Children. This is a Christian community. And when it was primarily focused on what Christians can and do, can do to change the gap, the learning gap among our students. And it changed my way of thinking. We have to pull North and South Jackson, East and West Jackson together. We've got to leave our homes, leave our churches, get into that community and see the faces of these children. And when you do that, your whole perspective changes. You take ownership. And that's what we try so hard to do, is to get people to come and look, see what you can do, get involved.
And when you change literacy at a young age, when that student enters college better prepared and they don't have to take the remediation courses. They don't spend 2 years in college discouraged because they're behind their other classmates. The completion rates will change. So what starts at a very young level will carry through to college completion as well as preparedness for the workforce.
But the
Prepared for life.
collaboration that we're trying to do is great. And once we could get to the root, like you said, making sure we are addressing all issues based with our young kids. But if we can motivate our parents to get them motivated to work with their kids when they go home. Like you said, you had a great meeting in Lincoln Courts. But as I go to schools and work, a lot of parents are concerned, and they fuss about they don't have books, to do homework and things like that. But it's more so of if we can ever get a great collaboration like we got going here, get to the root of the problem and say, okay, we know what the problem is. Now what can we do to bring our parents and our kids closer together and have a great support team with the parents? Because I still feel like, we need to work with that kid every day. But when he get home and go back home, if he's not still being taught to continue to read, like I always, at an early age, I took my son, let's go in the restaurant. You can order your own food. The small things like that we can encourage, just send home and say, let your kids read the newspaper today. Or let them watch the news and kind of do some small things like that. Or when they go in the restaurant, allow them to order their own food, to be able to read the menu. Just small things like that we can encourage, send home with the parents to kind of do some things to kind of, I'm teaching them to read, but he really don't know I'm teaching them to read. It's more so some ideas to kind of help send home with the kids to kind of keep that progress going when they go home.
But these are things that you have to reinforce daily.
Right.
And that builds confidence, that encourages them to have commitment for what it is that they're going to do, because leaders are readers. You have to read to succeed, and all parents want their children to succeed. All parents do.
They do.
And once they wrap their mind around the fact that they need to be able to read in order to comprehend what needs to be done in their particular, because all situations are different. It's different in a rural community, it's different in Jackson than it would be in Memphis or Nashville. But, there's resources out there. You can go to the library, there's people there that will help you. 20% of the time, you've got teachers. The teachers are engaged with their students. They take ownership whenever they start school. Those teachers own those students whenever they come in there, and they're all about educating them on what it is that they need to know. And what we're doing here is just getting that message out. So, and the more you get that message out, the more you have people that get it. But you have to continually put that message out there. Otherwise, it's overlooked or it's forgotten about. Because kids today, they get on their smartphones, they get on their tablets, and it's just like that, and nothing sticks. But these are things that are important, and if you want to build a future, if you want to build your career, then you're going to have to move in that direction.
Well, let's not take it for granted that all kids have smartphones, number one. There's the lack of access to resources. There's some needs out there, like access to the internet, that is critical. You know, when children come into this world, they didn't ask to be here. But while they're here, we should give them all the attention that they need because they are the future of this community. Whether we like it or not, if we don't educate the least of these, then that's a problem. One of the things that I hope that we would do, and to encourage the school systems, to develop a dashboard. Let the citizens see exactly where we are on grade level, per grade, even to the subgroups. Let's see if we can start tracking. Because I think if you see it and you can internalize and believe it, then you're going to have more of an effort to do it. I think there are several systems across the state that do have those type of dashboards. So transparency is power, particularly if they know what the needs are. Then you're not making decisions on levels of spending money in other directions when it obviously has to go in this direction in order to solve the whole problem. When people ask me about what it's going to take for our system to be successful, one of the things I say, make sure you educate the child. Educate the child, not to become the parent that's cycling the whole thing over and over again. We're running the 32 and 34-year-old grandmothers now. We've got to change this, and it can be changed, but only if we prioritize it. If we don't intentionally do it, then we're going to continue to have this discussion as we did 6, 7, 8 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years from now.
Jerry, what percentage of your school would you say, what percentage of the schools are Title I?
All but two,
All but two.
All but two.
So how many schools in the district?
23.
So 23 schools, and all of them are Title I school, which means the schools are receiving funds to support parents with strategies and intervention in reading and math so that they can help their child at home. So what percentage of the parents would you say attend those meetings, whether it's in the morning or the afternoon?
It depends on the school. I
Yes.
don't want to give
Well,
a blanket answer
okay,
for the
so-
district
okay.
because some schools really do
Do a good job.
they put in a lot of work
Very
to
good.
get parents in the door. I'll
So-
say as a general rule of thumb, it's generally more successful at the elementary age.
Yes.
And this is typical across
That's correct.
the state and the country. You see a drop off with middle school and high
That's
school
right.
students. So,
But if I could commend the school system, my cousin, little son, he's about 4 years old, about 5 or 4, and he goes to school, and one of the schools, he come home, and if he says something, if he don't say a full sentence, he'll correct you, and he won't, he said, you're not saying a complete sentence. So whoever his teacher is, I'm like, and every time you say something, not a complete sentence, he be like, no, because you're not saying a complete sentence. So,
yeah.
I think that is real, a good teacher, but more than
that's-
that's doing, yeah.
That's a nuance.
And that's
That-
a kid that's telling you that.
Yeah, that's
you know.
something that's built into the curriculum in elementary school. So
Well, he's using it, I'm telling you, he's telling you not saying a complete sentence.
language development,
That's
up
right.
until about 4th grade, language development is primarily oral. So you made the comment earlier about having your son order food
Yeah.
or retell something he heard on the news. It's a
Wow.
great way just to learn how to summarize and restate things back, and that's a simple strategy that any parent could
I
do in
commend
any
That's
y'all for that
situation.
because he's doing real well with that.
But again, that's part of the Title I strategies and intervention, is giving those parents the tools that they need to make sure at home they can practice those skills. So the school district do have strategies and interventions in place. How do we get the parents to come to the school and motivate them to be involved is the hook. And I think it's different at every school.
Well,
The-
part of that
the
is
school- I was
transportation,
gonna
part
say
of it
that.
is working 1 or 2 jobs. You have a tremendous amount of poverty here in the school district. Like I said, 82% of these kids come from home at or below poverty, so they don't have the gasoline. They're moving a lot because they can't keep up with the high cost of utilities and rent, et cetera. So they're at a disadvantage. So in order to make sure that they get it, oftentimes we have to go to them. We have to go to them, make it more accessible where they are. And also talk with our local industry, particularly our major industries that has parents, that parents can have kids in school system. Allow them some time on site potentially to understand what good education looks like. Give them, let the school system come out to them, someone represents them to come out on site. Let's go to the I won't say projects, but to the affordable homes that people have, but let's go on site with them. So we have an opportunity to do what is not being done, and it's going to take something different. We have about 1,000 kids that's born every year in one category or the other. So universal preschool, we only can do what, about 500 to 600 maybe?
Yeah, we right now have between 600 and 700 students out of the approximate 1,000 kindergarten students.
So we leave the 300, approximately 300 out. And a lot of those have to furnish transportation to and from those schools. So that leaves a lot of other people out. So these are what we call barriers. And those barriers need to be removed, even if we have to invest in those. Title I can help. What more money is necessary, I would like for the school system, just tell us what you need. Give us the world-class system that you need on paper, then let us find out a way to fund it.
Well, our next step is to invite parents. So as I'm going to collaborate with Don to see how can we include parents. So if you know a parent or someone that you would like to recommend to attend the meeting, I think that would be the next step that we need to take. Because we need to hear from our parents because they are the one who's doing the heavy lifting. These are their kids, and we need to hear the voice of the parents. Did anyone would like to add to that or think that would be the next step that we should take?
Well, I think along with that, mentoring, always, if you don't have a relationship, if they don't care, if they know how much you care, you may have an opportunity to impact a student's outcome. And it takes, as I understand it, a student that has suffered some kind of assault or whatever, trauma, thank you. It takes 90 encounters with that child to build trust. 90 encounters. So to your point, Mr. Dodd, I don't think, just 1 hour a week is going to get it. We are going to have to engage. As a community, we're going to have to wrap ourselves around one another.
And I would say let's also, I think, spend a few minutes investigating the opportunities some of the schools already provide and not assume that they don't take place, because when I think about some of our principals in the inner cluster of the city, take Alexander Elementary, for example, they do a homework diner on a monthly basis where they're inviting families in, they're feeding families as they sit down and do homework that's aligned with the curriculum in place. I think about Ms. Braswell over at Lincoln Elementary and all the events she has for her parents, Mr. Walker at JCT and the community involvement that he's tried to breed. The first thing I would say is ask the principal the opportunities that already exist, because there are quite a few. And then second, how do we remove some of those barriers to double, triple, quadruple the number of parents that are able to attend those functions?
I think if we strengthen our PTOs like we used to be years ago and build that collaboration with our parents, and like you said, that trust factor goes a long way. Once you get that trust with the parent and the teachers and the school and the principal, that relationship will go a long way with our parents, because I just feel like the parent is the main component. Until we get that parent to be 100% bought in, and that parent is trusting the principal at that school, and the community is supporting that whole concept, I think we'll see a big change when they see everybody's collaborating, because a lot of times they used to everybody's fighting, but if they see a great collaboration of people for that one cause and say, okay, we are focusing on how we can get our kids at a better reading level, and we're going to do that no matter what it takes. We're going to stay together and just make it happen.
It's about trust.
And
It's about trust.
the other thing is not minimizing the sphere of influence that we as community leaders have. Outside of the things we do at work, we engage with people in our families, our neighbors, our community, or whatever, and we know these people. We know these parents. And speaking, when I know that Johnny is not performing well, if his mom or his dad or my neighbor, what's wrong with me engaging with them on that, offering assistance, talking to the things that I know? So many times we know so many things, but we don't share what it is we know. We don't use our. How many of us can say that we have actually? How many of us sitting around this table can say that we've actually partnered with an individual school in this community, and we're doing all that we can to help to improve caring and engagement. I applaud what Johnny does in bringing men out and have them. But those type of things are the things that we have to build on and say that we have to take a more direct approach to making sure that we take on the responsibilities. One thing to talk about those things. It's another thing to really get on the ground level and say that I'm going to put my feet to the pavement and I'm going to get out here and use my voice and use every resource I have available to making sure that the parents I know are involved in that school. I stand up in my church and say it. I stand up in my staff meetings at work and say it. I stand up and the different other civic and organizations and things I'm a part of, and we say these things because at the end of the day, because we are in extraordinary times, that means that we have to take extraordinary measures to make sure that this is what's happening. I mean, you think about the numbers that Harold is yelling out. That's essential. But I'm encouraged because I know what Jared is saying is true. Elementary school parents are involved.
That's right.
If they are involved, now think about it. They are involved, but we're saying that by the third grade, we make a decision on whether or not they go to prison. So how is it that the level where the parents are most involved, we are having the least amount of success? That means that it's not just parents. Parents are essential, but it's not just parents.
Right.
And that means that we have to take on, I'm going to say it again, we have to make sure that we're doing everything with our 20% that we have. If we can't say that, we can't even begin to mention parents until we know that we're doing everything in our power with our 20%.
Like add a component, with the Men on the Move that we was doing, first day of school, we did the men, then we did the churches. This year, we're gonna invite our parents the first day.
That's good.
We more so on ask, we're gonna still ask our men, and ask our church to go and adopt a school like they did last year. But we asking every parent, look, you ain't gotta tell your kids. Get your kid, put that kid on that bus. That first day of school, go in that school and welcome your kid to school, but also build a relationship.
Right.
So we want to bring the added component more so to build a relationship, because we got to have our parents with relationship, even with the problem that we're having in our school system. We just got to have that parent and school relationship a whole lot better than what it is now. So that's going to be an added component this year, the first day of school.
Yeah.
To get our parents more involved with the school that they kid attend.
And some parents just don't know what's going on in the school. So how well we communicate as leaders, one of the things that I tried to do is make sure every flyer I sent home was on a yellow sheet of paper. So the parents automatically knew that was directly for them. So I think the communication, parents do want to do more. Every month it was a celebration around parents makes a difference. It was fathers makes a difference. So just really try to get the parents to come to the school is the key, so that they felt they wanted to be there, because it's like, wow, wonder what's going on at that school. Every month they're celebrating something. So I think that parents want to come, but how do we make it where they feel I want to be there? I got to get up to the school.
I'll just go back and I would say again, I think something that can be done, because sometimes those flyers get left on the bus.
That's right.
And sometimes they don't make it to the bus. So helping the principals and the school leaders get that message out, because like Mal, like I know Ms. Taylor, like we send stuff home, you probably have to pass stuff out that goes in book bags, and then you see it in the hallways on the way out the door. So how do we help amplify that message? And I want to go back to something that Johnny said about if you just have 30 or 45 minutes a week, pick a school and get a relationship with that principal or assistant principal and say, what can I do to help? Because as a district leader, like I visit 3 or 4 schools a day on average. Nothing makes me feel better than seeing a community member in the school. We have pastors that go, some of you around this table go consistently, but seeing you walk in the halls, helping us to reinforce whatever it is that's going on. It's just, it doesn't seem like much in isolation, but if you have 100, 200 people doing that, like you said, that can really add up quickly and change the culture in the hallways that then filters in to the classroom itself.
I have a slogan that say, many hands lighten the load. So teamwork make the dream work. We cannot do this alone in education. So getting the parents, the community, the pastors, any leader to come into the school is what it's gonna take today to get kids to read and perform on grade level. Literacy is everyone's problem. It's not just our problem. And the parents blame the teacher blame the parents. Stop the blame game.
That's right.
Amen.
Well, I'm a parent of a Jackson-Madison County High School student. He's going in to be a sophomore at Madison. But even at that, as a parent, I have trouble having him tell me what's going on in the school. And so actually I got involved with our parent support group, and this year I'm the president of that. And it's gonna be a challenge just to, it's gonna require as a parent that I go and get the information for after school activities and stuff. You'll walk in the school and you'll see a big poster that the kids have been looking at for weeks about an event, and I'll have never heard anything about it. So it takes a lot of effort, and a lot of the schools, PTAs have some Facebook groups, and we have one as well, and that's helpful because as a parent, I can ask other parents, I think I heard about this, but I'm not sure. And so we do provide opportunities every month. Our group gets together, and I know there's several other PTA groups that do get together to share information, and I think that is so valuable. But as what people might say is an engaged parent, it is still really hard.
It is.
And it gets harder the older they get.
That's
because
correct.
You have to make even more of an effort.
That's correct.
To find out what's going on in the schools. And so I think even more so for parents that, if it's single parents or parents that work third shift or something, that's even more of a challenge if you don't see your child too much time in the afternoon. And so, I think what you're saying is definitely true, but it is hard. It is hard when you try. When you're trying.
I think we have something in place. We have robocalls, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes, and the app, I have the app,
Most
and
of
I
us
guess
have
it
phones,
is.
so I think they always send out messages about weather and all those things. So
Yes.
just send out, the principals, I think, have access to
Yes.
do as well for their parents. So
Yes.
just put their announcements on and send those out.
And we get them, believe me, if
I
I
think
didn't
that's-
get a text
I think that's
alert,
the
an
best way.
email, and a robocall
Yes.
some days, because some days,
Yes.
you need all three of those.
And you do get it because the school does provide those tools, but the student can get their parents to do anything. So once I made that as a strategy, which means it was a competition, the classroom that had the most parent engagement, that's who I celebrated with, because I said, now, parents will do anything their kids want. So once I got the kids involved, the motivation, go home and invite your parents, the teacher, it was a win-win. So it takes everyone working together to get the parent engagement piece, because Title I has the money. How we get them there, whether it's providing lunch, breakfast, but that's the opportunity that we provide those parents with those strategies and intervention of what's taking place in the school, because that's how we're being evaluated.
There are a lot of opportunities for people to be involved in our schools. A Rise to Read is a great program that's in the schools working with second graders on increasing those literacy skills. Partners in Education through the Chamber is a great opportunity, as well as Tennessee Achieves. There are organizations out there that if someone wants to be involved, they can be involved. So just on a flip side from the parent involvement, if you're a community volunteer, there are places we can plug you into.
Which is so good that you're doing this and causing the awareness or creating greater awareness, because I'm hearing everyone around the table say what I think. What our program tries to say.
And other
It's
people need to
everybody.
get the message across from a diverse group
Right.
that's obviously focused on the issue. And that helps them to understand, hey, wait a minute, maybe this is a real thing. You know what I mean? It's something we might need to think about. It's something we might need to discuss. And if you can get communities to do that, if you can get neighbors to do that, if you can get parents to do that with their students, because they're going to say, well, hey, we seen you on TV. What was that all about? Did you not watch it? Well, it was on, but kids, they snack. They don't actually look at anything. I mean, they glance at it, and after 2 minutes' time, they're moving on to something else. But if the parents can go back and look at that and then engage in a conversation, then you can sit down and the kids will ask questions. Kids are pretty smart. I mean, they learn things using their technology. Now, Harold, everybody doesn't have technology, but everybody talks. And, you know, it's just one of those things to where you get a conversation started and you go old school. Now you've got commonality. Now you can talk about things that make a difference that's going on in your community and your life.
I know everybody talks, but not everybody's being heard.
Right.
This is not anything that's new. We have had issues of race, issues of culture, issues of resources, issues of defined directions that give us an opportunity to go where we need to go to be successful. This community is dying unless we as a people find some life in others, care enough about them to make it work for them. As a community, we're better than what we see. This is not anything new. This community has been wrestling with this problem for a long time. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to make sincere, intentional efforts to resolve the problem. And there's a big resistance to doing this. Otherwise, it had been solved already. So the people that's around this table need to own it. We need to get other people involved in it. I'd like to hear what the principals are saying about the issues that they're having in their schools. Not just the parents, but what are the other difficulties surrounding it? I know we have a lot of teachers that now just leave the system on an annual basis. Some good, bad, and indifferent. But teachers that are lifeblood of this education system, we have to give them the tools that they need and an environment that they need. But parents also need something. We need something in this industry to make this system work because we got to hire those eventual people. But if we have colleges and universities that has to teach remedial work with these children, a good percentage of our graduates, then that's a problem. But it has to be resolved at the very beginning, not in the middle, not at the end. And it needs to be intentional transparency. How can you work on doing something when you don't know what I hear what you're saying, but I don't see it? We have to be transparent and intentional about what we do in this system. And we got to build trust and awareness that there is a problem. Beyond that, we'll be meeting like this for years to come, and that's unfair not only to us as society, but it's also unfair to our children that are yet to be born.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think the last couple of years we've been very direct about where we're at and what we're trying to do. And so I can't speak to what happened before, but I think anyone who says that the school system doesn't currently have a strategic plan academically that's trying to execute it and paying attention. And I know our teachers would say that because you guys get to hear it all the time in service and professional development, so Mal's my backup there. If we could turn that around and get community leaders to then be speaking that through megaphones about this is what they're trying to do, this is how you can help, that moves us forward. That's important. In terms of, teacher turnover and things like that, I know that's a thing that's brought up. The truth of the matter is our turnover rate's not any higher than other school districts around here. That surprises some people, but we're sitting at around 10 or 11%.
And that, according to research, teacher turnover should be no more than 10%. You should expect that. And that's what the research says, between 5 to 10%.
Right, and that's where we're at. When I was
good.
I've been in other districts, high performing districts.
That's right.
That's exactly what we had there too.
5 to
And
10%.
so, that's something that I wish wasn't as big of a talking point, because I think it casts a negative light on the system, when in reality, we're not seeing a percentage of turnover that's any greater than what most districts around us are seeing.
But that's what the problem is. If we don't know, if it's not transparent. The first time you said, I didn't hear it before. But I hear from teachers, they're leaving for one reason or another, primarily because of they can't afford to stay here, or the system is not what they thought it would be. The point being is that we are closed in terms of the information that we have to put out into the general public. In the African American community, black males what is their average score? What is their average proficiency rate per grade? When we look at the money that we spend, it's not that we don't have the money to spend, that we direct it in other places. The pressure should be on those that have the resources, can direct those resources to where you need them. It's just like if we got potholes in the street, we want to come out and fix it. If we got holes in the school system, we want to come out and fix it. But not next year in the budget. We want to fix it now. So we do what we do by ignorance or intentionality. We have to stop it, and let's get a whole grasp. Our elected officials need to have a roundtable discussion, specifically about education, and about what those stressor points are, what the resources that they need, what the vision would be, because I'm not certain that all of them have bought into the vision. Because if they were, then they would be around this table and others getting you the money that you need to do it, if that's what's required. But I think most of it is because we don't have an intentional spirit about what we're doing and a consistency about it and the trust that it's going to take in order to move us forward. The parents and the students and this community, it's going to have to be at one. We need one Jackson-Madison County, not 3 or 4 Jackson-Madison counties. But that's what we have now. And that's what people recognize, whether we say it or not. We need some intentional resources and intentional direction to where we want to go to in order to make this a world-class system of the school system and a world-class community.
What I found, though, when I was doing Madison Achieves, we had these meetings. I mean, we would meet sometimes for 2 to 3 months on a regular basis. But at the end of the day, you go back to the library, you go back to the school system, you go back to the classroom. It was nobody's job.
Nobody's job.
I'm telling you, Arise to Read, this is our job. We are committed to it. If we can get people to step in and help us, our children are to be coached twice a week. We have enough coaches for once a week. We need more volunteers. We don't have any expenses to speak of except our director. $62,000 a year budget, I think, which is nothing. But we are struggling to find funding in the city to pay him. Somebody has to recruit and manage those 450 volunteers. We need funding to do that. But at the end of the day, if everybody goes home and does what he's been doing, nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Well, and I think by making it literacy, by defining an issue as literacy, it helps us define what we can do individually as individual citizens, as organizations, and as a collaborative group. And so I think that might help give people in the community a sense of what is possible and what can be done. And there are communities near here that have literacy councils. And that doesn't mean that we have to create another layer of bureaucracy with a staff person, but it's certainly something that at the library with our director, we've talked about how can we formalize a literacy council type thing and go look at what Collierville's doing and some other places so that we can get in a transparent manner the information and needs of these things out within the community and be focused, because I think it's hard to know what to do unless you're told, okay, this is something specific. Arise to Read needs people. Tennessee Achieves needs people. The schools need some people to do this specific thing. Because if you just tell people we need to help fix our education system, that just seems so too generic and too big. But I think that by defining a issue as a community as how do we address literacy, that can open up doors, and that is something that is our new tagline at the library, opening doors. How can we open the doors? How can we use an existing resource that is funded by this community as a way to provide these resources out in the community? And I think that's what we want to do. That's what we are doing, but we can always do more, and we just need this feedback and this collaboration that is taking place now and can continue with other groups to help better define what what that thing is that we can do. But I think that it's important for our community's future. And so we're looking to be the resource, but we're looking for the community to say, what can we do? What do you expect us to do? It's the same way we're looking at the school system, and you're telling him, what do you need, and what are your issues and stuff, and what would we like to see from an expectation level of the school system? What do you as a community expect of your public library?
Here's some things that I sat here and I've listened to everything that's going on, what's being said. The one thing that I think needs to get interjected is keep the kids first. I mean, these programs are going to be, they're great to talk about. And some of this I say, you may have to just cut me, because here's the thing about this. If there's a 5th grade kid who does not know how to read, he doesn't know how to read. You're not going to change that today or tomorrow. Back to what you said and what you said, I'm going to get back on what you three have said. He can't read, and you're not going to change that. That should have been a long time ago. And he should have learned how to read a long time ago. Whatever program you want to put in place, the fact of the matter is that kid was not done right in our school system. So how do we figure that out? Well, we talked about taking things home and being resources at home, and for that parent when you come home. You know how many keys I see around kids' necks every single day? Mm-hmm. That tells me he opens that door himself. Mm-hmm. And what happens is he's at home alone himself. Mm-hmm. I've talked to, I'm at Arlington Elementary, and I've talked to him, and I have a silent lunch program, so I get to talk to the kids. And it's a sad thing that's going on. And we can't blame them. They are in a predicament. They are in a situation that they cannot get out of. And the only way they're going to get help is with us. What are we doing to make sure that our flock is getting a chance to read and be successful in our schools, in our school systems? And that's it.
Jerry, let me just say right quick. What is the instructional focus around literacy at every school?
Their curriculum. So,
the curriculum.
Yeah.
So they don't have an instructional focus around literacy?
Yes, they do. No, it's just not that abstract.
Okay.
It's built into their curriculum. Okay. Yeah. So every teacher at every grade level that teaches English or language arts has curriculum that will take them from day 1 to day 180. And then we have an instructional framework as a district that's consistent across all subject areas. So specific strategies that they're to use to engage more students, to give them more opportunities to respond. And yeah, so it's a combination of those two things.
Okay, just based on my experience, we had the curriculum, as you just mentioned, but you also had an instructional focus. So when you walk in the door, every parent, every community leader knew the instruction focus was reading comprehension. So that means every child had to work on their reading comprehension skills every day. And so when you think about literacy, sure, when you think about a balanced framework, you can talk about phonics, phonemic awareness, comprehension. You can talk about vocabulary development and fluency, but having one of those as the instructional focus will help our kids and the parents understand at home that when you're working with your child or the community leader come into school, this is our instructional focus at the school, reading comprehension. Mm-hmm. So just identifying and laser focus so everyone's clear on school-wide. This is a focus for every child in the building. So that may be something that we want to go back and take a look at.
It's probably a separate conversation for us to have, because I actually don't separate those out. I think you got to look at that row blended together. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, folks, what's our next move?
I just want to piggyback off the vision of Jackson-Madison County School System. I feel like if someone doesn't know the vision and know what's happening in the schools, they're not involved enough. You know, show up to the school board meetings, listen to what our school leaders are saying. You'll understand the vision, you'll see it, you'll know what's going on in our schools, and it's refreshing. There has been a tremendous change in the short time that I've been there, and it's exciting, it's positive, and kudos to you all.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the purpose of this initiative, is to get the word out. I think that Jackson-Madison County School System is in a good place right now. A lot of it, the credit would be attributed to this man right here, along with Ray Washington. I mean, I think he's going to do a fine job. And it's just a matter of, they're gonna need our support. There's an old adage that it takes a village to raise a child. But, you know, you have to, it's not just something you say, it's something that you have to do. And you can look around the table and see the diversity that we have here. We have young people, we have older people, we have people from the school system, we have teachers. I mean, we're all concerned with what's going on. I'm a grandparent, I've been a parent, or I am still a parent, but my daughter, she's not in school anymore. Let me digress there, but you know, the bottom line is, you have to read to succeed. And I think the next steps is to continue to reinforce that message, and perhaps we do need to get some parents involved in the conversation, to get their thoughts, to get their ideas, and see where it is that they feel like, because, you know, just like Dalton's talking about, he had seen you before, but he didn't really know, you know, who you were. And I've known who he was pretty much ever since you've been there. But, you know, the whole thing is, it's just a matter of, you have to acknowledge who's there. And you're not going to find a bigger proponent for Jackson-Madison County Schools than this guy right here.
Yeah, I've seen him and even laughed with him. Actually, I think it was the first time we did the game where we had to have the money and everything, wasn't it? I think that was the first.
Yeah, the poverty simulation.
Poverty simulation. Yeah. And so I know he's there and involved. I'm even talking about down to a lower level. If a fifth grader is coming by and looking at him and going by like this, he may wonder, what is that guy doing in my school? Why is he here? And that's the personal level that I would love to see from us all, is to get to know the kids. And they're I'm gonna tell you, man, there's some great kids in our school district.
Yeah.
And they're just put in a situation. And some of them are put in a no-win situation, but they're still trying to win. So how do you get that help to get on that winning team? And it's us.
But there's nothing wrong with our kids, as you indicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's what's wrong with us as a community, as adults, and the actions that we take. We have to find the intentional will, in order to make sure that the school system has what it needs to be successful. We are at a place in time where we have a choice to make in this community, whether we're going to value education as we should, intentionally, or we're going to push it by the wayside. And this calls for our elected leaders, those who hold the purse, to our city, county, and the treasurer, to put the money where it needs to go. But it has to be one that they can make, and not something that we spend money frivolously over other things that shouldn't take priority. We need them here at the table talking about education and what it means. We need them at the table to understand and know what these teachers are doing every day, what these kids are going through, what these parents are going through. And again, without blame, to understand what type of system that we've created over these many years, and now that we ignore. It's not about an individual, it's about the whole community, which is made up of teachers, preachers, doctors, and lawyers, and industry, parents, students. That's the most precious thing that we have going forward. And if we can't prioritize them as number one, then we have no future. It's not complicated per se, but it is because of what we have as a tradition, what we have as a culture that we find ourselves in. But we have to be bold enough, intentional enough to want to change it, and transparent enough to not just be ashamed about what we see, but knowing what we know, and then be willing to fix it. I think that everybody has good intentions and a good heart, but until something motivates them to the point of where it is not about me, it's not about my organization or my race or my religion, it's about the children. If we can do that and do it consistently and do it as soon as possible. We didn't get into this overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. But it has to have an intentional way forward. And leadership comes from those who hold the resources in the palm of their hand. It's not that we don't have $50,000 to give the school system, or $50 million, excuse me. Is that we don't have no reason to give it. And so we need to make it transparent. We need to have a dashboard of approach. Let people see exactly what we're dealing with. Because it's going to take some time. It's not going to be happening overnight. Money won't fix everything. But the bottom line is that we know that there's transportation costs. We know that teachers need what they need to have in order to make their work more powerful. They shouldn't be digging into their pockets to find money to buy pencils and pens, etc. Parents are only on a limited income. We have to understand all the nuances of what it takes in order to build a community, and without that, in terms of our leadership, then it's not going to happen. So our leaders need to sit around this table in this venue for the public to see and talk nothing but about education, not about what project we're building, where we have put in the most money in this, that, and the other. If you're not putting it into our children, then it's going to be wasteful spending.
The only thing I might disagree with there, and I'm not saying this actually as a disagreement, but I think if we look here and we say, we've seen this growth, we're already doing something right. So let's continue to build on what's working. You know, let's don't continue to tear this little thing down, kick this one out and start with a new something. Let's look at what's working and let's continue to work in that direction.
Well, that's part of the reason why I was motivated. You know, I came in with Dr. Jones when he was superintendent, and this is my community. I grew up here. I went to school here. I went to college here. My family's here, you know, multiple generations. Part of the reason I was motivated to stay, number one, I have a good relationship with Ray Washington, who's taken over as superintendent while a longer-term search is done. But number two is I'm dedicated to the work that's already taken place. Right. I want the needle that's moved this much in the last 18 months to move this much in the next 5 years. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so I think our variable, we say our variable is time. We know that the plan is in place, but our variable is time.
Jared, I graduated Northside High School, so I have been in this community my very long and old life. And I have seen, I think we counted 9 or 10 superintendents. So all we do is throw it out and start over, make some of the same mistakes, and finally kind of begin to figure out what we're doing wrong, and we throw it out and we start all over. Can we please just build on what's working?
I want to interject about our school district and our school system about, we have I want to say, use the right terminology, is a prison being built. And here's the thing about it, is those kids who can't read, those people who are putting that money in that prison, I really want to make them look like fools, because I don't want to get it filled. And the reason, and the way we not get it filled is our kids start to read. That's right. Because what they're doing is, and I said it before, but here's the thing about it, is I'm biblical, so here's good. The building they will come, right? So they're going to build it, and they will come, and then go out and prepare your field. We have to go out and prepare the field for these kids so they don't end up in that prison, because that prison is being built for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders right now. The ones that we're talking about that cannot read. So they wouldn't build it if they didn't think it was going to get filled. And who are they going to fill it with? Well, they're going to fill it with those kids that are now who are illiterate and can't do the things they're supposed to be doing in the first grade.
Well, I think at this point, I want to honor everybody's time, thank them for showing up. We will have another roundtable discussion, I believe, and what we need to do is support Jackson-Madison County School System. This is a good place to start, but we need to build a strong, vibrant, and resilient community. And you've got to teach these children that you're going to have to read to succeed. Parents should be on board with that, because every parent wants their child to succeed. Jared wants all the children in the school system to succeed. I think everybody here at the table, including Austin, I mean, you can look back on, you know, you're closer to everything than the rest of us that are here, but you can look back on where you've come from, and you can remember the teachers that's had an impact on you.
It's interesting to see the other perspective.
Exactly, and this has been, I'm sure, thought-provoking for you to be a part of this, and I thank you so much. Vicki, thank you for allowing him to come and join with us, and you know, that made a favorable impression upon me. So I like what I've seen. It's positive. We want to continue with that. I'd like to thank Dr. Jared Miracle for sharing on the part of the school system. And we're here to support you. And I'll be getting with you very, very soon to find out how I can do more, because there's been some points brought up here. And we have to take ownership of what's going on, because there's places out there that are available that you can plug in and just motivate these kids. I mean, they're looking for encouragement, and they respond well to that. Teachers know that, you know that. Austin, you know that, I know that. I mean, you know, it's just a matter of, that's why we're here. So unless anybody else has anything to say, there's been a lot that's been said. I'm going to be looking forward to the replay. So once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Steve Beverly and Union University and each and every one of you that's taken time out of your busy Monday. Thank you for what you're doing and what you're going to continue to do. And y'all have a happy Monday.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.